we go. Ko ranganui kei runga, ko papatua nuku kei raro, ko ngā tangata auaha kei wainganui, tihei wā mauri ora. Kei te whakamoimiti a hau ki ngā tangata takitaki o tēnei whenua, te moimoia. E mihi mai o ha ki a koutou katoa mō tau pōwhiritanga, mō tō tautokotanga ki au ki te kōrero I tēnei ata. First of all, I want to acknowledge the Indigenous people of this land, the original people of this land right here. And then to you all, thank you so much for being here. It's really beautiful to see all your faces. And thankfully for me, I have a bit of jet lag, so I was up really early, and this is not freaky. So the first thing I want us all to do is put down your knives and forks and stand up, and I want everybody to show me your muscles. Some of you have already done some exercises today. Come on, show me your muscles. The best one gets a block of chocolate, all the way from New Zealand, which apparently you can buy here too. And I won't give it to my table because that's kind of cheating. I'm going to give it to this woman here and that beautiful, no, not you, the person next to you. Thank you. Okay, you can all sit down now. But what we've all established is we have muscles, right? We use them, we work them, we strengthen them. But there are also three muscles that I wanted to talk about today. Creativity, critical thinking, and storytelling. These are not talents, I don't think. They are muscles. And in an AI-driven world, they are the ones we cannot afford to let weaken. Because AI doesn't replace them. It exposes whether you have them. Creativity without critical thinking is just chaos. Critical thinking without creativity is limitation, I think. Storytelling is how we make sense of both, and that's leadership. Today I'm going to share stories from my documentary filmmaking and one takeaway from each production that I hope you will train your muscles with and take back to your workplace. Because we have very different industries, but I'm sure that what I can share does work in yours. So, who am I and why does that matter? I come from a small beach town in New Zealand of 500 people with a population that's 60% Indigenous, 60% Māori. We used to hitchhike to school. My parents, a milkman and a seamstress, encouraged us to wander the world and wonder at the world, a life of curiosity. But also as first-generation New Zealanders to discover what can we give back to this general discussion of life. I've worked in war zones, dictatorships, across religions and cultures, places most people wouldn't even travel to, where trust wasn't optional, it is everything. My camera has been my bridge, a way to connect, a way to understand. And to paraphrase one of my favourite artists, Basquiat, I never went to film school, I just looked. Storytelling, curiosity, and human connection are leadership tools. For a time, I thought my job was simple, find a story and tell it well. But through my 30-year career, I've struggled with the most significant issue, authenticity, authentic storytelling. Asking myself each time, am I the right person to tell this story? Am I telling it the right way? Do the subjects of my films understand what they're actually a part of? I have at times felt really uncomfortable. Am I extracting stories? Am I actually a colonizer? I arrive, I film them, I ask far too many questions. I'm there for years, they get really sick of me. And then I go on and experience a whole level of success that they don't. Perhaps what will set us all apart as leaders, as storytellers, as humans, is not what we can produce, but how deeply we think, how bravely we create. That will bring us to a whole other level of success as we truthfully connect. And I want to creatively take risks. I want a life of adventure. So my first lesson was, with my first documentary film, trust your gut. I was in a bar in London, and as I do, I talked to these two guys sitting next to me as I was waiting for my friend, and they were Lebanese brothers, and they shared with me something unbelievable. Colonel Gaddafi had commissioned them to run a beauty pageant in Libya. After 19 years of international sanctions, Gaddafi was reopening the country and telling the world, come on in, Libya's open for business. I was intrigued, it sounded absurd, but I waited and waited for it to happen. I slept on a friend's couch in London for 2 months, just waiting, and then suddenly I was on a private jet to Tripoli with international models and a spa pool at the back of the plane, strangely. And that became my first film, Beauty Will Save the World, and my first big lesson in creativity as a muscle. Because, gosh, how people questioned me, going somewhere so unsafe, throwing my own money into the film without any idea whether there'd be a documentary at the end of it. Knowing your creative work is different from mine, but instinct is instinct. Has anyone in this room been in a work situation before where you can't really express why you're feeling uneasy or it's not right? Please put your hands up. Yeah. It's your gut, right? You can't quite vocalize what you're saying, and probably in professional situations to say, oh, this doesn't sit well on my gut, just doesn't seem to be kind of the sentence you can use. But being a creative leader, we should and we need to realize that instinct has a huge value. My gut told me the context of a film on Colonel Gaddafi with a documentary exclusive would resonate internationally. And with international models, a forbidden and forgotten country in the mix, something extraordinary would happen. I believed it. I started to understand I was drawn to juxtapositions, and I started to really believe in time and trust it. Beauty Will Save the World evolved into an unlikely film of the friendship between dictator Gaddafi and a 20-year-old American model who grew up in a commune and had never been outside of the US. He made her honorary consul to the US for Libya. The US rejected the appointment, saying she needed to be a bit older. But the film launched my career onto the world stage, and I learned something else. Don't fall out of love with your idea. So who here overthinks things? You think about it too much, you talk about it too much, all of a sudden you're bloody sick of that idea, right? My grandfather has a story for all of us. When he was 20, he walked for 2 years from California to Argentina. And he learnt to be quiet, and he learnt to be confident within himself. One great piece of advice he gave me is don't overtalk your ideas. Be judicious about who you share them with. You speak too much about it, you've already made it in your head or devised it, you become exhausted by it. It's like a relationship. The spark disappears and you're out of love. You don't actually want to follow through on that creative idea. And to be honest, I learned the hard way. While I was making Beauty Will Save the World, I told a friend about it, and she kind of went, and I was like full with all this enthusiasm. And she went, oh, that's interesting. So who wants a cup of tea? And honestly, my heart just collapsed. I thought, really? Have I made all these sacrifices for nothing? Creative ideas are fragile. They are something special. Trust your instinct, protect these ideas, and let them grow before you release them into the world. That's how you build strength. So, when I enter into a film, I go for gold. Plot my most extraordinary arcs, story arcs, and scenes. I encourage you the same. Plot your most extraordinary scenario or outcomes. My next lesson, my next film. I was in South Sudan at the end of the longest running civil war in African history. Each night we'd all gather at this camp, aid workers, journalists, mercenaries, sharing stories over beer and popcorn. But that's where I noticed this Italian woman, very stylish, with her team, and they stood out in this fractious environment. I'm going to play you the trailer of that film. So I was prepared to film for years with little funding, whatever the story needed, but I asked myself at the start of this film, but how do I plan for the great unknown? So I developed a simple tool in the beginning of this film, and I've carried that through all my filmmaking. At the start of filming, I now write a script, not a traditional script, but a map of possibilities. The highs, the lows, the triumphs and the tragedies, the worst case scenarios. Because storytelling is not just about capturing reality, it's preparing for it. And I imagine failure, collapse, chaos, death. That's how I stay ready. It's a document I don't share with anybody though, because as a human being, I don't want those things to happen to anybody. But as a storyteller, I need them. I need those moments that test the human spirit, that reveal the resilience that's in all of us. I need those highs and lows. I encourage you to always imagine the most extraordinary outcomes in your work, because when you think at the edges, you lead differently. This is my way of pushing creative boundaries. Think about what would pushing the boundaries at your place look like. Lean into yourself and create space for others to shine in their own creativity. None of us is solo. We are all teams. I was at a film festival in Reykjavik, and one night in a bus station, they served us this dinner in the middle of the vastness of Iceland, and we each got served a sheep's head. And some guests got up and walked out, some were just refused. There was sort of quite a lot of, discussion over it all. But apparently it's a local delicacy, and I thought, well, I'll give it a go. So I ate a bit of it, rolled the eyeball around in my mouth before swallowing it, as I was told to do. But I happened to sit next to this Icelandic composer who lives in a remote country of Iceland, but actually he's even way up the top. He converted this old chapel. So he's remote, but he has this phenomenal Hollywood career. You will know his work. And he said to me, "Where are you from?" And then he said something really simple. "In this industry, isn't it great being an other?" And that really stopped me, because I'd been told for years, you've got to move to LA or London or New York. You can't have a career down at the bottom of the world. Come on, girl. You've got to move to do anything. But he reframed it, and I realized limitations don't restrict creativity. They define it. I was building my style by acting fast, coming up with an idea, jumping on a plane, starting to film, researching as I filmed. And I learnt, don't overthink things. I embrace my naivety. I embrace the not knowing. I'm fearless, not reckless. I take enormous creative, financial, and physical risks, but I never regret them. One day I was in a supermarket back home, and as you do in the queue, picked up a magazine because the queue's not moving fast enough, started flicking through, and I saw an article about this had just happened in 2015. And I read the article, and there was a line in it where the designer, Guo Pei, said, "I didn't know who Rihanna was." And all my films are about isolation. Basically, they're autobiographical. I'm exploring my own isolation through other people's creative stories. So I thought, this is interesting. I went back home with my shopping, and I Googled her name and number, got a number, and then I called and called and called, because people kept on hanging up on me because I don't speak Chinese. That's my ignorance. Eventually, I learnt later, they were running around trying to find somebody who spoke English. She got on the phone. I said I wanted to come. She said, no, don't. She's really private. Do not come over. I said, I'll be there in 3 days. I'm going to just play you a part of the trailer. This film was just me, my cinematographer, virtually no budget. We had to be resourceful. We had to trust each other. But creativity thrives in trust. Leadership means bringing others into your vision. And I wanted a particular tone and a look without lights, traditional camera, equipment, or assistance. I didn't have any money for that. So the cinematographer took this on as a challenge. And when I explained what it looked like in my mind, he went off and he researched, and he found a case of 100-year-old lenses, literally in a granddad's garage, like right at the back, still in their original case. And I wanted to represent the many facets of Guo Pei's mind, that all these influences come into here and they refract around her mind, and then out comes this extraordinary creativity. So we went off and we bought an old chandelier at a second-hand shop, and we pulled it apart, and I carried pieces of this chandelier in my backpack every day filming. And we'd be filming something, and I'd pull a piece out and hold it in front of the lens, and we would film through these refracted pieces of glass. And then jokingly one day I said, do I need translators? I mean, I don't speak any Chinese at all, but I thought, oh, well, maybe I can do something else. What's in my creative toolbox? So we filmed this whole film without translators, and I learnt to read Guo Pei's emotions so much more keenly. I learnt to read the feeling in a room. I learnt to sort of understand nuances of how we are, how we kind of gesticulate. And it was really interesting. I wouldn't have gone that deeply into the person of Guo Pei if I had had a translator there telling me what was being said. It did stitch me up, though. So after some months, we filmed this one for 2 years. After some months, I'm still looking for that big scene, which I had written at the start, We're in her salon. She starts yelling. Pieces of fabric are flowing. People are coming in and out. There's a hell of a lot of yelling going on. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got gold. There's something going on. I don't know what it is. And we filmed and filmed and filmed. And I didn't have enough money for some months to have the work translated back home in New Zealand. When I did, I was so excited. And then I read it. And it was a discussion over what we were going to order for lunch. So that wasn't going to make the film. But recently I saw Gualpay at an exhibition of her work, because my film will often screen around the world with exhibitions of her work. And she said to me, I must return and film the part 2. Her reasoning, she felt she hadn't ever done as good a work as she did when I was watching her and when I was asking questions. So creativity is a muscle, but so is trust. When people trust you, they create better work. And perhaps I'm not just speaking about my team, because that really surprised me. The film was selected for the Best International section of the Oscars. It screened in so many film festivals around the world and was bought all over the globe. Find your empty space. Some years ago, I was selected for the prestigious Berlin Talent Campus in Germany. I was struggling in my journey towards authenticity with my current film I was making, Crocodile. Crocodile's a coming-of-age film set in Nigeria about these 9 young people who are exploring being something else in their future other than, drug runners or scammers, which sadly is the norm there. They live in this small city in the middle of Nigeria. And as you can imagine, I filmed with them for 7 years. They'd already began filming many years before, because they had started out as little kids making crazy little sci-fi films on one broken cell phone. But huge creativity and imaginations. But my discomfort was, because a lot of terrible things happened over the years we filmed, and I'm a white woman from the bottom of the world, a developed country, but am I okay to be telling this story? So I'd been selected for the talent campus in Berlin, but then COVID hit Germany and everything went online, and I was told for me it was going to be 11 p.m. till 7 a.m. every day, and I thought, no way. So I thought more deeply about what the talent campus was going to offer me, that it was going to extract me from my everyday life. I was going to hear different voices, different perspectives. It was going to challenge me in ways I hadn't imagined. It would be unpredictable, and hopefully I'd come up with some resolutions. It was an empty space, but I couldn't go. So instead, I couldn't go to that. So instead, I got some friends to drop me at the top of the North Island, and I walked for 31 days, because that's what I had, that I was going to Europe for. I had 31 days. And I walked and walked. I did 852 kilometres through some really remote places, met some friggin' weirdos out there. It was tough, but it was unpredictable. And I came up with some amazing resolutions, because I had found my empty place. And we each need this empty space. Even for just a half an hour a day, instead of going for a run or a walk and putting in the music in your ears, just have nothing. Or on the bus when you're coming into work, just let your mind wander. Because I believe that's where critical thinking deepens. During that time, I made a really difficult decision. I gave power away. I've made the subjects of my film co-directors and co-owners. This is after me investing hundreds of thousands in this film. But it wasn't easy. And it cost me control, but it was the right thing to do. And that decision changed everything and is part of a ripple of change throughout the industry. Because critical thinking, oh gosh, wait on, haven't seen the photos of me on my walk. Whoopsie, there we go. But critical thinking isn't comfortable. It costs you something. But really, it's the best way to approach creativity. The payoff was the film was selected for one of the top film festivals, Berlin, early this year. We were there in February, and me and 5 of the Nigerians were there. And after only 15 minutes, when the tickets for the 4 screenings were released, we sold out. It was weird, and even the festival couldn't explain it. We had standing ovations. We premiered at the largest cinema in Berlin. It was amazing. But critical thinking doesn't just happen alone. It happens in how we think with others. So that's our poster. I think sideways. So as a filmmaker, I take thousands of hours, bloody years, decades of footage, and I reduce it to 90-minute films. So I'm constantly making critical decisions. Over time, I've developed a habit. I do some of my best critical thinking sideways. I don't sit across from people, I sit beside them. With cinematographers, it's evolved over the years for our hundreds of hours on planes or in cars, shoulder to shoulder. We just talk through everything. With editors, I get them to get up and we go for a walk. One of them has a dog, off we go. Because something shifts when you're not face-to-face. It becomes less confrontational, less performative, and I believe more honest. You're not defending an idea, you're exploring it. Face-to-face can feel debate, side by side feels like discovery. Humility is key. Gosh, we all need a touch of narcissism in our creative businesses, that's for sure. But creativity without humility becomes blindness. I was in Afghanistan in 2006 at the height of the war, and I was there off and on for 8 years. But I'd heard about this slightly mythical place in Kabul where the films of Afghanistan are stored, the archive, 100 years of film archive. But somebody said to me, you're never going to get in. It's $10,000, to even grease the palm. There's guns, they have it really locked off. And also, the Taliban's burned a whole lot of them. So what is actually there? But one day, I convinced this young Afghan filmmaker that I was mentoring, come with me. So it was a really friggin' hot day. I had my full burqa on and we trudged across Kabul. We hopped in and out of cars where people said, yes, there's more room, and then we squeezed into these cars. And we were stopped a lot by American military, by guards, by police, and there were helicopters overhead, and I thought this is heavier than normal. And eventually we asked somebody, and Hillary Clinton had come to town that day. So it meant that it was even tougher for us to get across Kabul. But I was determined, and we get there and the guns come out, right? And I'm like, no, I've come all this way, blah, blah, blah. And they said, you've got to leave. And I said, no, please, I just got to come in. And I'm bloody pushy. And I said, I've come all the way from the bottom of the world, do that whole kind of bullshit. And eventually somebody said to me, okay, come on in. I'm just going to play a part of this trailer. Oh, was that it? Yes. So, but I nearly ruined this whole film. I submitted it to film festivals and it got into 2 of the world's top film festivals, which is really rare, Venice and Berlin. No, Toronto and Venice. But the programmer at Toronto said, we really, really want your film, but you're going to have to change 2 of the music tracks. And I was bloody furious. I said, no, wait on, I'm the creative. You're not going to tell me what to do. You're just a programmer. And he said to me something that really has stuck with me. Why are you making films, if not for the story to be understood? The 2 tracks I'd used, I'm going to play a piece of both of them. What was I thinking? You're going to go, what? So I chose these 2 pieces of music, but I was determined because I'd worked for a year to get licenses on this music. And my creative arrogance meant we nearly lost the opportunity for it to premiere. He said, critics and audiences, that's all they're going to walk out of your film with, going, why did she use that music? I'd lost the big picture. And I think as creative leaders, we kind of can think, oh, no, I've got it. But actually, you do need to listen to other creative leaders, because he had the big picture. I was just like in my creative bubble. I want to show you these 2. So I'd use Tom Waits in a film about Afghanistan. Seriously, what was I thinking? And you listen to the lyrics. The army in the cold, cold ground. How depressing is that? And you see all these beautiful images. So I cut this film with those 2 tracks. Tom Waits had given me permission. It was a big friggin' deal, but I changed it, and the film was better for it. I've got a little exercise for us all to do, because a scar is something AI will never have. They're a product of our lived experience. They encapsulate emotion and memory. I now have an exercise we're all going to do, because we are all storytellers, and it's going to show us all the essence of being human, the spark that can only come from human to human interaction, and the uniqueness that is each of you. Think of a scar on your body. Here's a simple way to tell a story of the scar. You start with the emotion. Immediately I'm in your point of view. I was feeling. Give the context, the facts. This happened when. And end with the impact, because every story must be transformational. It changed me because. I'm going to tell you my story, my 2-minute story, and then you're each going to do it to each other. Okay, so starting with I was feeling really overwhelmed this day. I had convinced 6 friends and family to go with me to Jordan last year for a really significant birthday and walk for 14 days, basically from the Dead Sea to the Red Sea. The Palestine War was happening, but I convinced them all to come with me. This particular day was also, I knew, going to be our toughest. We were walking the Valley of the Knives, and so up we went 3 kilometres through this really jagged landscape. We got to the top. It was a friggin' hot day, and our guide said, be careful on the way down, it's a narrow path. Do not look at the view, keep the eyes in front of you. We had our packs on. But of course, I didn't listen, really. We started down this track, and I looked out at the view, and I face planted. And as any of you know, when you have an injury on your face, the blood just started to gush. This happened when I thought I knew better. I thought I knew better than the guides. The guides sort of swarmed me and started to pack it because it was just gushing, and I immediately said to my sister, quick, film. That was what I thought of. Later that night when we got to camp, because we still had to climb 10 kilometres back up the other side of this valley, and it was really difficult walk. That night, somebody took me to a hospital in Pietra. I got all the stitches, and when I got back to New Zealand, my doctor took all the stitches out and said, you know, with this cream and some plastic surgery, you won't see your scar, probably, over time. And actually, I thought, this day has changed me. Because when I just have resting face, you can't see the scar. But when I smile, you can see the scar. And it's a beautiful reminder of the uniqueness of the love that's around me, of friendships and adventure. So I keep my scar. So I want you each to pair up, turn to the person beside you. You have got 2 minutes each following that to tell each other and hello. You have to do it quietly. It's conspiratorial. You're sharing something really personal. Okay, 2 minutes, go. And change if you haven't. Change if you haven't. Change storyteller if you haven't. Okay. And stop. So, what just happened? You connected with somebody who was a stranger this morning. You connected instantly. That scar is now your individual touchstone to remember what makes you and you and you human. This is what AI cannot do. So as we advance into a more AI-impacted future, and if you ever feel overwhelmed, think of your scar or touch your scar. AI is going to get faster, smarter, more capable, but it will never have your scar. It will never think like you. It will never create like you. So train your muscles, because that is our human advantage. To recap, here's some takeaways. My practical tips, I had a lot, but we whittled them down to these 6. Trust your gut. Create a map of possibilities. Think around the edges and lead differently. Lean into yourself, lean into others. Find your empty space. Think sideways. Your scar is your touchstone. We now have 10 minutes, and mentors apparently on each table are going to lead a discussion, and I believe you will take something back and make your workplace a better place where you can be a creative leader. Over to you, mentors.